I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. Our next guest is a regular, and I'm going to give you a little bit of his resume to begin with. He's an expert in derivatives. He was an expert in derivatives back in the 80s when they were first bringing these things online. He was an expert at a big bank in derivatives, knows all about it. He's a macroeconomist. He is also an expert in the gold arena and the economic arena, but especially the gold arena as he buys tonnage. He helps arrange tonnage, not coins, physical tonnage of gold for his clients. He also puts out an excellent newsletter, KirbyAnalytics.com. We're talking about Rob Kirby, joining us today from Canada. Rob Kirby, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Pleasure to be with you, Greg.
I want to start with how close we are. In a past interview, you said by the end of the year, and boy, that things would get really rough, that this thing could blow up by the end of the year. And we just got through September. People were pointing towards September, and people said nothing happened. Well, yeah, something happened. Things were so bad the Fed couldn't raise rates. We had a flash crash in the markets. We had all kinds of gyrations going on. Yes, something did happen. How close are we to this thing, to the end game, to the finico, the finish, the final crescendo, where you said that this would all be over when China stops getting its gold?
Well, I think we're palpably close to major dislocations in the market, and I would actually argue, Greg, that some major dislocations have already occurred. Specifically, you referenced the September time period just a few months ago. And back in the September time period, we saw credit spreads on interest rate swaps go negative in the 10-year period or duration in the U.S. Credit markets. And the implications of a negative trading on a spread basis on interest rate swaps implies that the capital markets perceive banks to be a better credit risk than the U.S. government, and this is a vote of non-confidence in the dollar, and this is counterintuitive and flies in the face of the dollar getting stronger in the foreign exchange markets, or as measured by the U.S. dollar index, and it also lines up completely with work I've done in the past that says that the Exchange Stabilization Fund has been a receiver of fixed rates in the swap market on an all-in basis as a means to create stealth demand for U.S. government securities. That they've done. But they cannot play the other side of that trade and be a payer of fixed because that would blow the banks up. And as a result, we've seen these swap spreads go negative or start trading negative, and this has largely arisen because China has been selling U.S. government securities, on an all-out basis, and so the U.S. Treasury market is weak, and when the Treasury sees that occurring, it runs counterintuitive to this strong dollar, which has been a rig job from the get-go, and to take the pressure off of these spreads going negative or remaining to trade negative, what they decided to do was have their accomplices in the ratings agencies start to downgrade U.S. banks. Because this way they can get their story straight by saying that they have a strong dollar, and you see the strong dollar and swap spreads trading negative are absolutely in opposition to each other. So it exposes that there's something tragically wrong and something that doesn't make sense occurring, and they don't want it's like shining light on cockroaches. And the cockroaches are everywhere, and they just don't want people to see them. And this is how extreme the measures have become to make our capital markets look as they are not. We have an economy that's rolling over in America. Foreign demand for physical precious metal is exploding, as evidenced by demand at the U.S. Mint, the Canadian Mint, and for all the minted product, and the wholesale markets are getting tighter as we move along, and they will continue to tighten because the appetite for physical precious metal has never been stronger, and it continues to strengthen. And this is also evidenced by the physical tonnage held by these frauds in my books, like GLD, the big paper ETF, whose reported tonnage has gone from roughly 1,700 metric tons back in 2013 to yesterday they were reported to be down to 634 tons. So, and isn't it funny how the price of gold has gone down as GLD has been systematically looted of their physical tonnage, while the dollar has increased, yet swap spreads are trading negative. Greg, this stuff just does not add up, and you can't make this stuff up.
So, Rob, you had made a statement a while back that things were going to go bad when China doesn't get any more gold. They just got 21 tons just recently, this past week. They added to their gold supplies. They continue, as you know, because you do deal in tonnage. They are continually adding to their gold supply. How close are we to the Western world with the available gold that's not in somebody's vault? How close are we for the gold to be, the end of the gold to be done in the Western world? How close?
I think we're palpably close to it, Greg. I can speak to people that I communicate with in the procurement space, and I know that increasingly large amounts of dollars are being mobilized to buy up any and all existing stocks of physical precious metal, and the demand for the remaining physical metal that's left. It's not going to abate. It's going to get worse, even though there have been attempts to make the movement of large amounts of money more difficult. The players that are involved are so large that their movement of money to mobilize to buy physical metal will not be stopped. And this is an inevitable process that's playing itself out in the system as we speak.
And how much tonnage is out there? I mean, is there 300-400 tons left? It's a
good question as to how much is left, Greg. And the reason it is such a question is we have America that still clings to its claims that it has 8,000 metric tons roughly of sovereign gold. They claim to be in possession of enormous amounts of custodial gold that they hold for other countries. Yet when other countries ask for their gold back, they're given replies of not now and go away. Further to that, Greg, they won't even allow foreign countries like Germany back 2 or 3 years ago when they asked for Germans did not actually ask for their gold back immediately. In the beginning, the Germans said, can we just come and audit our gold and check it to make sure it's in good standing? And they were told no. That subsequently made the Germans ask for some of their gold back, and they were told no again. And that would make any rational human being question whether or not the gold is actually there. I don't buy into to these silly fairy tales that the gold's there, and there's logistical reasons why the Germans can't see it or have any of it. That's a dog that doesn't hunt, as far as I'm concerned. So the market continues to get tighter and tighter, and I want to loop back and talk about the situation back in September of this year when the swap spreads went negative. That in the capital market space is as people who understand credit would understand. That's a repudiation of the dollar. And isn't it interesting, Greg, how the dollar was being repudiated in the swap market, full stop, the attack on the gold price intensified, and we saw a string of days, the length of which we have never seen in the history of the gold market, of down days in the paper gold price, as reported on the COMEX exchange in New York, and this is literally a clear, clean-cut example of the lengths that these people that control the Treasury and especially the dark side of the Treasury, the Exchange Stabilization Fund that has trillions of dollars of positive worth, and this money is used as an attack dog in the same way that the U.S. military is used as an attack dog to enforce imperialist U.S. Foreign policy. The same thing is done in the financial arena with this stealth, unbelievably huge pool of capital that's contained in the Exchange Stabilization Fund.
But are they close to getting to corralling the gold? I mean, how close are they? And if they do corral the gold, is that going to be lights out? I mean, is that going to be because you said that before? So how close are they to corralling this remaining tonnage of gold? Your clients, what do they say?
We keep getting closer. And it literally is a case, Greg, of kicking a can down a road. At some point you come to the end of the road, and, how close are you to the end of the road as you approach it? It's still a great question, and nobody knows the exact day, but we do know because we live in a finite world, and you cannot print physical metal. And physical metal has to come out of the ground. It has to be mined, or it has to be taken from existing stockpiles. And as stockpiles keep getting worn down, the telltales are evident. People that are due gold don't get it, like the Germans. When orders are placed for gold and people are promised physical gold and they don't get it, and they won't accept a bribe or a payoff in exchange for their silence, that's when the jig will really be up. And
do you think this is going to happen before the end of the year? Do you think it's going to happen before the end of the first year?
It could happen that quickly, Greg, or it could bleed over into next year. I know it is coming.
Oh, but you think it's going to be between now and the end of next year? I mean, you think it's...
I think we're in the window right now where it's where the dollar is going to be exposed. You see, ultimately this is tied to the dollar. It's twisted and intertwined with the dollar, Greg. And at some point, people are going to realize that the strong dollar that we've had jammed down our throats through manipulations is really no better than U.S. government promises back in the Bretton Woods era to exchange dollars at a rate of $35 for an ounce of gold. That promise was no good. The strong dollar is a myth, and because the dollar isn't strong. The dollar is a fiat currency that has been abused and debased beyond belief, and they have literally used cheap parlor tricks right on up to major stage illusions to give the dollar the appearance of being strong, and that's been done through the credit markets. And because there are instruments in the credit markets they can do to try to make things look other than they really are. But the swap spreads going negative sort of blew that one on them, and now they're trying to make up for that by downgrading the banks.
They did. That's what I wanted to bring up. So you're thinking because of you're saying in the window, another sign that we're in this window of the end game is that they just downgraded the banks. Morgan Stanley's laying off, 1,200 top paid people. All the big banks, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, State Street, Morgan Stanley, everybody, Goldman, everybody got downgraded by S&P, and that was a big yawn. I didn't hardly even see it. I saw it in the foreign press, but I didn't see it in the U.S. press. How close, if we're in this window, what's the window? How long do we have before, it's game, set, match?
I'm guessing the window might be 4 or 5 months in duration wide or open, and but we certainly are working our way to a culmination, some kind of a blow-off event that is going to literally change our financial universe forever.
And you're talking in the next 4, 5, 6 months.
Yes, we are right there right now, Greg. We are right there right now, and it could happen any day. I believe that our monetary authorities understand this, and I think that's also why concurrently the world's being put on a war footing, Greg, because these sociopaths that have conducted themselves in this most unscrupulous manner in the stewardship of our global financial arena, they know it's coming to an end, and the end game or the end piece is very likely to stage a massive war, and then they'll blame the financial collapse on the war. And this is a time and tested thing that the keepers, these Keynesian-minded monetary people, they've done it throughout time. It's documented history.
So you think we'll get war before we get a collapse, or we'll get a collapse and then war right afterwards? But they're going to be really tied close together.
I think the likelihood is they're going to be concurrent, so as one can blame the other for the dislocations that are coming. Yes.
When you say dislocations coming, what does that look like to a guy with a pension, to a guy with a savings account, to somebody with $300,000 or $400,000 saved in their 401k, their life savings? What does that look like to them? What happens to them?
Well, the value of the currency unit won't buy you anything. You see, when you debase fiat money, ultimately the value of the currency in terms of its purchasing power basically goes to its real intrinsic value. When money's backed by nothing except ink or the full faith and credit of somebody who's printed too much money, its intrinsic value goes to zero. And that the implications of that are hyperinflation. And we will hyperinflate. That's a given. Keynesians don't like to admit it, but even John Maynard Keynes, the unscrupulous man that he really was, he knew that his system, he knew that his Keynesian system ended in a destruction of the currency. He admitted as much, and he rationalized his ways by saying in the long run we're all dead anyway. Well, we're at the end of the long run now. So according to the founder of this tragically flawed system, according to the founder of these Keynesian-minded people who are trying to extend and pretend on something that's destined and designed to fail, we're now left with holding the bag of something that its creators said would fail, and we're all dead in the end. So, that's what's coming.
And your sources are the guys that you help buy tons of gold for.
My sources buy physical precious metal for ultra high net worth people and institutions and individuals, and they can't get enough physical precious metal.
They can't exchange enough fiat currency.
They scour the earth looking for large amounts of metal. And there are certain pieces of metal that exist in the world that they have not yet purchased.
Do they get together?
But they will purchase it.
But do they get together and say, okay, here's what's going to happen. You get that, and you get that, and you get this, and then we're going to pull the plug at this point. Do they have an end game? Do they see the end? Are they looking at a point where, okay, we do this, and plug's going to be pulled? Is that how calculating they are? Is it that simple?
Well, no. I'm going to characterize it in this way. People that I work with represent money that is so large they know that they're going to end up in the very end game. They are going to end up with a whole lot of dollars that are going to be worth nothing, and they accept that. But in the meantime, they're going to convert as many of those dollars as they can into things that are tangible and that are going to maintain value once the world gets it that the U.S. dollar is tapioca and it's worth nothing.
Well, that's very interesting. Is that why all this artwork is selling for, I don't know, $200 million for a painting that
Sure. That's exactly what's going on, Greg. You know why? Because the artwork market is a market that doesn't have a futures complex connected to it, where price riggers can keep the price of it under control. It's an unbridled market, and it's telling you what's coming in the rest of the world for tangible items.
And why all the
it's just Greg. It's as simple as this. You know, gold has a derivatives complex, futures and options connected to it, and where price discovery is non-existent because people who have interest in making the dollar look strong can sell paper contracts and keep the price of real gold suppressed because the world still believes that gold has actually got a price discovery mechanism at COMEX.
When does
and it's
that change?
A fraud.
When does people say, well, they could do this forever, and you say?
Not a chance. Not in a finite world. And you see, to keep the game running, they need an endless supply of physical precious metal, which they don't have. And as they run out of physical precious metal to back up the fraudulent price that they set on the paper exchange, the game runs out. You see, so in a finite world, you can't do this forever. But they've done it a long time, and as the game's moved along the timeline, Greg, they've invented new products, and most of them derivative products, or most of them very, very murky type products, where they've been able to deflect investment that would have otherwise gone into physical bullion. Back in 2005, they created the gold ETF, GLD. And they touted that to the world as being real physical metal. Well, I don't believe it is. I don't believe it ever was. There might have been a constituent of it that was, but it just that's just a bird that never flew in my books. But they have stalking horses that go into the capital markets and preach that this is an equivalent of gold.
You have you've said in the past you have global sources. I mean, I don't know, in the Middle East, in China, in Europe, in the U.S., your sources are Canada, of course, that's where you are. Your sources are global. Are all your sources all on the same page? Are they all the people that buy gold by the ton? Are they all like, oh, yeah, no, this is a consensus. No, we know it's going to blow up, and we know it's going to blow up soon. Is that the key phrase, soon? This isn't going to go on for another year or two. Is that right?
They only speak in terms of the absolute inevitability of the outcome.
So you don't get the idea that they're thinking this is going to go on until 2017 or 18 or
absolutely not. Absolutely not. And interestingly, and I don't mind referencing this. Listening to an interview yesterday on the Alex Jones show with a chap named Dr. Steve Pachenik, who is a very, very well known and respected person from the U.S. Intelligence community. I listened to Pachenik speak yesterday, and he said we don't have a year left. He said we have to get rid of Obama now. And he said I'm not advocating in any way, manner, shape, or form an assassination, but he said we need to remove this man lawfully and legally because our country does not have a year. Well, I'll tell you something. What Dr. Pachenik is speaking of is completely in line with what I'm hearing from people who command extreme wealth. So that's sort of what's in our near-term future. We're in big trouble here, Greg. We're in real big trouble.
And you think it unwinds any time? And I want to point this out very clear. This could unwind any time. This could go sour. Don't think you have a fabulous Christmas coming and it'll put it off for another year after Christmas. You're saying, oh, you better be on standby for a calamity, a collapse. Is that what you're saying?
I do believe so.
And you think it'll unwind in the next 3-4 months?
I think when things unwind, Greg, they're going to unwind at lightning speed.
And you think it's going to be before the end of the first quarter?
It could be before Christmas, Greg. It could be. It's coming.
That's for sure.
You know what, Greg? You know, we are standing on the railway tracks looking into a tunnel, and there's a light.
Are people going to lose their stock funds, their bank accounts, their you know, are they going to lose everything? Are some people going to lose everything?
I believe that and more.
What do you mean?
Literally, Greg, at the end of the day, I think there's going to be blood in the streets.
And Janet Yellen raising rates, and you're seeing the same thing around the world in all your contacts, even down to the coin, which it tells me that little people, because little people don't buy tons. I don't buy tons. My people that I know, people that watch this don't buy tons. People I know that are lucky to get together, you know, hey, I bought 10 silver eagles or something. But you're telling me that the demand is coming all the way down to street level. That's why you're seeing all these gold coins and silver coins at the U.S. Mint, Canadian Mint, wherever, Australian Mint. You're saying all this is the same around the world, that all the mints are getting just vacuumed out of all their gold and silver coinage.
Yeah, it's that, but Greg, I think it literally goes further. I think it's time to start thinking about how much food you have in the cupboard and how much lead you have stored, and a means to deliver it. Which coincidentally, you know, it's no surprise at all the clamoring from the apparatus in your police state has been squabbling about trying to take guns away from people. And, of course, that rhetoric pitches up the closer to the edge we get.
So you're saying when they start talking about this gun, that it's not really the Muslim extreme terrorism and all the spying. This is about control of the population so they don't revolt. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Because it's going to be that bad. People are going to be like,
yes.
What the what?
Yes.
And what's this kabuki theater with Yellen and the newspapers on the front page of the business section that she's going to raise rates, and the Fed puts those stories there. So the Fed looks like if they don't raise rates, boy, they're going to look stupid. So they look like they're going to raise rates. Even your friend Catherine Austin Fitts says they're going to raise rates a quarter, and if it blows up the system, well, so be it, basically. And I know you know that there's a quadrillion, that's the official number, of derivatives and how dangerous they are. I know you know all about them. And so could she blow the system up if she raises rates with the derivative market?
In all honesty, I view the ultimate player that determines everything is not the Fed. It's actually the U.S. Treasury, specifically the Exchange Stabilization Fund in the Treasury. And if they can pin a debacle on Yellen and the Fed, I think they'd be very, very happy and pleased to try and deflect the attention and the ultimate ruin onto the Fed, who I believe, if we don't go to war, I do believe the politicos will try to scapegoat the Fed and try to lay it all on their mat. But the real actors here are in the U.S. Treasury, at least in my research and in my understanding. So that's been a constant thing that the Treasury has adopted since the exchange stabilization was founded in 1934. The ESF acts in the background as the maestro conducting, but they like to let the Fed take all the credit and all the glory because they don't really want to be singled out for how powerful they really are and what they really do, and the fact that they operate above all laws, and the fact that they are they don't report to anyone, and they don't publish financials, and you see, so they're very pleased to let the Fed take all the public criticism and the praise because they want to operate in the shadows. But that's really what America's become. It's just a shadow. It's a shadow organization that is controlled by people of dubious identity, and you see, and that's ultimately wrapped up in the in the stealth coup that's occurred in America. America's controlled by people who are not elected, and the financial apparatus is controlled by these dark entities, and these are the people that are pushing for globalism, one world government, one world currency. Because it's the ultimate power, and that's what they are in it for.
Could Yellen trigger? Could this trigger a derivatives meltdown? A quarter point, eighth of a point? I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Listen. If faith is truly broken in the fraudulent dollar, anything could happen. I mean, listen to former Dallas Fed President Fisher. Google the name Dallas Fed President Fisher, confidence in dollar, and read about what he said years ago. And all he said was, the whole experiment of the fiat dollar is nothing but a game in confidence. And if confidence is lost, unthinkable catastrophic things could develop. But he said that's why we're so determined to get it right and make sure that people never lose confidence. Anyway, but doesn't that sound like hubris, Greg?
It sure does.
But the whole thing is, this is what these sociopaths have built, and this is the way they live their lives, and this is the way they operate on a day-to-day basis.
And you're saying that the quarter point raise could be the trigger that drives it all into the toilet?
Well, Greg, it's like when you shatter a glass, you can't pour liquid into it anymore. And when you shatter the confidence in the dollar, anything can happen.
And you're saying if they raise rates, the dollar may not go up. The whole thing may just unwind.
At some point, Greg, the dollar won't go up. At some point, people will realize that these machinations and this freak show about whether the Fed might raise rates by a quarter, an eighth, or might not, at some point it won't matter. At some point it won't matter. And that will be when the confidence is lost and that this is really a freak show.
And you think that's coming. You can see light at the end of the tunnel.
Of course it's coming. And a lot of people, a lot of very, very smart people in the world already know it's a freak show and have already lost confidence. And it's just us, the great unwashed, that they want to keep believing in the system as it's reported to us by complicit people in the mainstream financial press, like the CNBCs and the CNNs and the ABCs and the CBSs. And, these are the people that are in bed with the sociopaths, along with, the media, the banks, because they all stand to benefit from the same game.
And you think this bank downgrade, which didn't get a lot of press, you think that's just more of a signaling of that it's unwinding, that it's ending? I mean, all the banks got downgraded at the same time.
Credit spreads, listen, when swap spreads go negative, that's what you'd expect if the market's juiced and rigged the way I suggest it is. That's exactly a way you would try to alleviate it. You downgrade the banks. So if the banks are suddenly looking like better credit than the government, we better do something about that or people will lose confidence in the dollar. So we make the banks look worse.
So they downgraded the banks.
Yeah, and that has the effect of running spreads back up positive.
So they did that. So they downgraded all the banks to prop the dollar up.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I got it.
It was actually to prop swap spreads up,
which in turn props the dollar up.
Well, it's to make the myth of the strong dollar look believable. It's hard to sell the notion of a strong dollar when banks are paying less for money than the government. And that's what negative swap spreads means. Banks can borrow 10-year money cheaper than the U.S. government. That doesn't make the U.S. government look like a good credit risk. And that is undermining to the dollar.
I got it.
So then you downgrade the banks, and then the banks can't borrow money as cheap as the U.S. government again by making swap spreads positive, and therefore, you see, this is the kind of shenanigans that are going on, but they've been going on for years.
But this is getting to the point where now they're going to eat their own. I mean, the Fed, which is been trying to prop the banks up, now the S&P, they've given them the green light to downgrade them to make the dollar look better, is what you're saying. This is all orchestrated, is what you're saying. And so this is just more signs that this thing's coming to an end, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. These are end game machinations, Greg. This is this is like if you go see David Copperfield he ends with the biggest illusion of the night. And that's where he makes makes a polar bear appear in a cage out of thin air. But that's what this is. That's what we're seeing. The Lear jet's about to disappear behind a curtain.
Rob Kirby, KirbyAnalytics.com. You have a subscription page. I'll post that up. What is it? What your subscription? Tell me about what you do for a subscription, because I mentioned that, but people don't really know what you do. What do you do for your subscriptions?
What I do is I communicate with my subscribers direct, and I don't write on a schedule the way a lot of guys do. I write when I got something to say or something to point out. And I'll be sending a missive out when I post this, when you give me the link to this interview, Greg, and I have a missive that'll go with the link to this. But I communicate directly with people, and I don't write in the public anymore. I see no value in it.
Rob Kirby, KirbyAnalytics.com. I'll post a link for your subscriber page. Rob Kirby, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Pleasure being with you, Greg.